The grand hall of the Voraxian archives buzzed with anticipation. Aliens of all shapes and sizes filled the curved seats, their multiple eyes and appendages focused on the central platform. Senior historian Skilnar adjusted his breathing apparatus and stepped forward. His gray skin glistened under the soft blue lights as he prepared to present his life's work. Esteemed colleagues, he began, his voice translator converting his clicks and whistles into the standard galactic language. Today I share my research on one of the galaxy's most curious extinct species, the bipedal mammals from Sol 3, known as humans. A ripple of interest moved through the crowd. Many had heard tales of these strange creatures, but few had studied them in depth. Humans vanished nearly 5 centuries ago, Skilnar continued. They destroyed their homeworld in what appears to be a typical case of technological advancement, outpacing cultural wisdom. He gestured, and a hologram appeared showing an image of ancient Earth. What makes humans fascinating was not their technology, which was primitive by our standards, but rather the absurd myths they created about their own capabilities. The image changed to show various human figures in different poses. The alien crowd chuckled as Skilnar pointed to the first image. Humans claimed they could temporarily increase their physical strength by a process they called adrenaline rush. They told stories of lifting ground vehicles to save trapped offspring. He paused for effect. Our biological models proved this would be impossible for their muscle mass and skeletal structure. More laughter spread through the audience. They believed they could survive days without water, endure extreme temperature changes, and even function with significant portions of vital organs removed. Skilnar's upper limbs waved dismissively. Perhaps most ridiculous, they claimed their bodies could repair substantial damage naturally over time, a process they called healing. The audience's laughter grew louder. Such self-repair would require incredible energy and specialized cellular functions not found in any known species, Skilnar explained. Clearly, humans were gifted storytellers, if nothing else. In the back row of the hall, a junior archivist named Mealtalk shifted uncomfortably. Unlike the others, he didn't laugh. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his species. In conclusion, Skilnar said, while humans might have become a noteworthy species had they survived, their self-destructive tendencies eliminated this potentially dangerous species before they could leave their solar system in significant numbers. The galaxy is perhaps safer without these creatures and their unpredictable nature. The presentation ended to appreciative clicks and whistles. The crowd began to disperse, but Mealtalk remained seated, troubled by something he couldn't quite identify. Later that night, in his small quarters attached to the archives, Mealtalk couldn't sleep. Something about the human presentation bothered him. He activated his personal terminal and used his archivist access codes to dig deeper into the restricted files on humanity. Most records matched Skilnar's presentation. Humanity had indeed destroyed itself in a series of conflicts and environmental disasters. Earth was now a dead world. But as Mealtalk scrolled through the classified sections, he found a troubling discrepancy. According to a sealed military report, a small human colony ship called Horizon had launched just before Earth's final collapse. The official record stated the ship was destroyed in a nearby asteroid field. But the evidence file was suspiciously empty. Mealtalk's breathing quickened as he accessed more restricted files. The deeper he dug, the more inconsistencies he found. Fragments of reports suggested the Horizon might have escaped Confederate space entirely. Even more disturbing, there were sealed orders regarding human survivors, orders that made no sense if humans were truly extinct. This can't be right, Mealtalk whispered to himself. If humans didn't all die, if some escaped. His terminal suddenly flashed a warning. Someone was tracking his access. Quickly, Mealtalk closed the files and erased his search history. But the seed of doubt was planted. What if human legends weren't just myths after all? 300 years passed since Mealtalk's discovery. His findings were lost to time, buried in the vast archives of the Voraxian Confederacy. Life in the galaxy continued as always, with no thought given to the extinct humans and their supposed myths. The science vessel Exploratory Probe 6 drifted through a remote star system. Its mission was routine: survey, catalog, and report back to Confederate headquarters. Science Officer Vriltek stared at her scanner readings with growing confusion. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns on the third planet," she said, her thin fingers adjusting the controls. "It doesn't match any known natural formation." Captain Drelzar moved to her station, his large eyes narrowing. Could it be a malfunction? Unlikely. 3 separate systems are showing the same readings. The captain considered this information. This system was far beyond Confederate space, unexplored until now. "Prepare a landing team. We'll investigate." Hours later, Vriltex led a team of 5 scientists to the planet's surface. The world was harsh, rocky terrain under a pale orange sky. The air was thin but breathable for most Confederate species. "The energy signature is coming from that ridge," Vriltex said, pointing to a distant rock formation. The team moved carefully, their environment suits protecting them from the planet's dust and radiation. What they found behind the ridge shocked them all. A settlement. Artificial structures partially buried by centuries of dust storms. The buildings were unlike any Confederate design, made of simple materials but arranged with surprising efficiency. "These structures are at least 200 years old," said geologist Srilmar, examining the foundations. "But the energy signature is active. Something is still running down there." They found an entrance leading underground. The team descended cautiously, their lights cutting through darkness undisturbed for centuries. The tunnel opened into a large chamber filled with strange machinery. Most was dead and silent, but one section glowed with faint blue light. "It's a stasis chamber," Junior Medical Officer Perlnax said, approaching the glowing pod at the center of the room. She wiped dust from its surface and gasped. "Captain, there's something inside." The team gathered around. Through the frosted surface, they could make out a bipedal form. "Is that?" Vriltex couldn't finish the question. "A human," Perlnax confirmed, checking her scanner. "Male. And according to these readings, he's alive." Captain Drelzar's voice crackled over their communicators. "Bring it aboard for study. This discovery changes everything." Against protocol but driven by scientific curiosity, Perlnax initiated the revival sequence. The ancient machinery hummed to life, the blue glow intensifying. Steam hissed as the stasis pod opened slowly. Inside lay a being none of them had seen except in historical records. Pink-brown skin, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with facial features unlike any Confederate species. The human male was dressed in a simple gray uniform with an unfamiliar symbol on the chest. "Vital signs stabilizing," Perlnax reported, scanning the still form. "Brain activity increasing." The human's chest rose and fell more deeply. Then his eyes opened, blue irises that seemed to focus immediately despite centuries of stasis. He looked at each alien face without showing fear. "Where am I?" he asked in perfect Confederate standard language, his voice rough from disuse. "What year is it?" The scientists looked at each other, stunned that the human could speak their language. "You're aboard the Confederate vessel Exploratory Probe 6, Vriltex said carefully. "The year is 2734 by your Earth calendar." The human closed his eyes briefly, calculating. 300 years, he whispered. Then he looked directly at Vriltex. "My name is John Carter. I was science officer aboard the colony ship Horizon. Where is my crew?" Vriltex hesitated, unsure how to respond. "We found only you." John Carter tried to sit up, but restraints held him in place, standard procedure for unknown species. He tested them, and the first hint of his species' mythical abilities appeared. The restraints, designed to hold a being 3 times stronger than the average Confederate citizen, began to stretch. The alien stepped back in alarm as John Carter broke free. The Varaxian research vessel hummed as it traveled through space, heading back to Confederate territory. In the medical bay, John Carter sat quietly on an examination table. The aliens had given him fresh clothes and food, but he remained a prisoner, a scientific curiosity to be studied. The specimen appears to be in remarkable health, Medical Officer Perlnax said, recording her observations while several armed guards watched from the doorway. Despite 3 centuries in stasis, all biological functions are normal. John listened carefully. His captors thought he couldn't understand their scientific dialect, but his stasis pod had been programmed to teach him languages during his long sleep. He understood everything. During the night cycle, when most of the crew rested, John accessed a data terminal they had carelessly left within his reach. His fingers moved quickly over the unfamiliar controls as he searched for information about Earth and the horizon. What he found crushed his spirit. Earth was gone, destroyed in the final wars. According to Confederate records, the horizon had been destroyed as well, with all hands lost. But John knew that couldn't be true. The colony ship had carried over 200 people, including his wife and daughter. If he had survived in stasis, others might have too. The next morning, Science Officer Vrltex entered the medical bay with a new device. "We will begin detailed physical testing today," she announced. John nodded, keeping his face blank. "What happened to my home planet?" he asked. Vrltex hesitated. "I am not authorized to discuss that." "I already know Earth is gone," John said. "I want to know about the horizon. Other survivors." "There were no other survivors," Vrltex said firmly. "You are the last human in the galaxy." John recognized the lie immediately. Something in her eye movements gave it away. A universal telecross species. That moment, he decided to escape. During a routine examination, John complained of stomach pain. When Perlnax leaned in to check, he used a medical instrument he had modified during the night. The electrical pulse temporarily disabled the medical officer's nervous system. Before the guards could react, John had grabbed her access card and was through the door. Alarms blared throughout the ship. John ran through corridors he had memorized from the ship schematics he'd studied. 2 guards appeared ahead. John didn't slow down. Instead, he charged directly at them. The guards fired stun weapons, but John moved with unexpected speed for his size, dodging the first blast and taking the second on his shoulder. The energy burst would have knocked out a Voraxian, but John merely stumbled, then continued forward. He slammed into the guards with force that sent them flying against the wall. "Alert! The human has escaped containment." The announcement echoed through the ship. "All personnel to security stations." John made his way to the engineering section, fighting through waves of pain from the stun blast. He needed to reach the escape pods. Chief Security Officer Drillzax waited for him at a junction, weapon raised. "Stop or I will fire," he warned. John paused, calculating his options. "You need me alive for your research," he said. "Alive, yes. Undamaged is preferred but not required," Drillzax replied. He pressed a button on his wrist device. Suddenly, vents in the corridor opened, releasing a greenish gas. "Neurotoxin," Drillzax explained. "It will paralyze but not kill. Most species lose consciousness in 30 seconds. John took a deep breath and held it. The Voraxian watched in surprise as seconds passed, and the human remained standing. 1 minute. 2 minutes. John's face reddened, but he didn't breathe. Drillzax couldn't believe what he was seeing. According to all Confederate knowledge, no sentient species could hold their breath this long. When John's lungs finally demanded air, he sprinted forward through the gas cloud, grabbed an emergency breathing mask from a wall compartment, and slipped it on in one fluid motion. Then he crashed into the stunned security chief. Minutes later, an escape pod ejected from the Voraxian vessel, disappearing into a nearby asteroid field. The ship's captain ordered pursuit, but the asteroids were too dense for the larger vessel to follow. "No life form could survive in there," the captain declared. "The human is finished." But deep in the asteroid field, John Carter was very much alive, plotting his next move. 5 years passed. On the outer rim of Confederate space, the mining outpost Drelka 7 thrived. It was a rough place where different alien species worked together, extracting valuable minerals from the nearby moon. Inside the busiest bar on the outpost, Kelly Foster wiped down the counter with a cloth. Her brown hair was tied back, her eyes constantly scanning the room. As the only bartender who could handle rowdy miners of all species, she had built a solid reputation. None of her customers knew she was human. "Another drink, skill," shouted a large reptilian miner. Kelly nodded and mixed his favorite blue liquid. Her hands moved quickly, never wasting emotion. The bar's door opened, letting in the artificial orange light from outside. A new customer walked in, tall, lean, with a hood partially covering his face. Kelly watched him choose a seat in the corner with his back to the wall, a habit of someone who expected trouble. As she served him a drink, their eyes met briefly. Kelly almost dropped the glass. She knew those eyes. Human eyes. "First time on Drelka 7. She asked casually. "Just passing through," he replied in the common trade language. "Looking for work in salvage." Kelly nodded and moved on to other customers, her mind racing. After her shift ended, she returned to her small living quarters behind the bar. She activated a hidden device under her bed, a communication system disguised as a storage unit. "Eagle to network," she whispered. "Possible Horizon survivor on Drelka 7. Will confirm identity." 3 days later, disaster struck the moon mining operation. A tunnel collapsed, trapping 5 miners. Emergency crews rushed to help, but the situation looked hopeless. The tunnel's support structure was failing and toxic gas was leaking in. The new salvage operator, who called himself Sam, joined the rescue effort. When the alien rescue crew hesitated at the tunnel entrance, Sam stepped forward. "I'll go," he said simply. "My species can tolerate the gas longer than yours." Before anyone could stop him, he entered the unstable tunnel. The miners watched the entrance nervously. 20 minutes passed, far longer than most species could survive the toxic environment. Finally, Sam emerged, carrying 2 unconscious aliens over his shoulders. He went back in immediately. Minutes later, he appeared again supporting a 3rd injured miner. On his final trip, he held up a section of collapsed ceiling with one arm, while guiding the last 2 miners out with the other. The outpost buzzed with the news. No known species had that combination of strength, gas resistance, and endurance. Security officers began asking questions. That night, Kelly found Sam at the edge of the outpost, watching the stars. "John Carter," she said quietly. "It is you, isn't it?" He turned, surprise flashing across his face. "How do you?" "I was on the horizon too," Kelly said. "Engineering section. We never met because I was on the night shift rotation." John stared at her, processing this information. "They told me everyone else died." "They lied," Kelly replied. 37 of us survived. We're scattered across Confederate space, hiding in plain sight." John's eyes filled with hope for the first time in years. "My wife. My daughter." Kelly's face softened. "I don't know about your family specifically, but Commander Howard has been keeping records. She might know." "Commander Howard is alive?" John asked, amazed. "She's been building a network. We've been gathering information, trying to understand why Earth was really destroyed." Kelly looked around to ensure they weren't overheard. "The official story about humans destroying themselves is false. Someone wanted us gone." John processed this information, his jaw tightening. "I need to meet with the commander." "We need to leave tonight," Kelly said urgently. "Your rescue display attracted too much attention. Security is already asking questions about a being with impossible physical abilities." John nodded, determination hardening his features. "I've spent 5 years thinking I was alone. Now you tell me there are others." "More than that," Kelly said, her eyes shining. "We have a purpose, and you just became our most valuable asset, the proof that human myths are real." A modified freight ship drifted in the shadow of a gas giant. Its markings identified it as a common trader, but inside, it was anything but ordinary. The vessel, named Remembrance, served as the mobile headquarters for the Human Survival Network. John and Kelly arrived in a small shuttle they had borrowed from Trelka 7. As they docked with the larger ship, John felt nervous. After years believing he was the last human alive, he was about to meet more survivors. The airlock opened. A woman with gray-streaked black hair stood waiting. She wore a simple uniform with a small pin, the same symbol John had on his stasis pod uniform. "Commander Grace Howard," she said, extending her hand. John shook it, feeling the firm grip of another human. "John Carter, science officer from Horizon Section 3. Grace's eyes widened slightly. "We thought Section 3 was completely lost. This is unexpected good news." She led them through corridors where humans worked alongside a few trusted alien allies. John counted 12 humans just on their walk to the command center. 17 systems across 3 sectors, Grace explained as they entered a room with star maps on the walls. "That's how far our network extends. 37 confirmed human survivors, plus you, all living under false identities." "How?" John asked. "How did anyone survive when Earth was destroyed?" Grace activated a holographic display showing an old ship, the Horizon. "Our colony ship wasn't the only one that escaped Earth. Official records were altered to hide this fact." Another human entered, a tall man with dark skin who walked with a slight limp. "This is Daniel Wright, our engineering chief," Grace said. Daniel nodded to John. "Good to meet another survivor. Show him what you found in the Confederate archives," Grace told Daniel. Daniel activated another display. 3 months ago, I was working at a Confederate research station when I accessed these classified files. The screen showed official documents with many parts blacked out. Earth wasn't destroyed by human wars or natural disaster as they claim. It was targeted. John studied the documents, his face growing pale. Targeted? By whom? "A group within the Confederacy called the Preservers," Grace explained. "They believe humanity represented a serious threat to galactic stability." "Why?" Kelly asked. "Earth barely had interstellar travel." "Because of what we are," Daniel said. "The abilities the Confederacy dismisses as myths. They're real. Our strength, endurance, adaptability. The Preservers recognized the potential threat. As if to demonstrate, Daniel picked up a metal bar and bent it with his bare hands. This would take mechanical assistance for most Confederate species. "There's more," Grace continued. "The information you took from the Voraxian vessel confirms our suspicions. The Preservers didn't just fear our physical abilities. They discovered something about our minds." She nodded to a corner where a young woman sat surrounded by data screens. "Amy, show John what you can do." Amy smiled and turned to her screens. Her hands moved across multiple interfaces simultaneously, processing information at an incredible rate. "I can track and analyze 16 separate data streams in real time," she explained. "Most Confederate species can handle 3, maybe 4. "Human multitasking," Grace said. "Another myth they dismissed." John watched in amazement. "So they destroyed Earth because they feared what we might become?" "Partly," Grace said. "But there's something bigger. We believe there's another human colony, much larger than anything the Confederacy knows about, hidden beyond Confederate space." She showed John another document, coordinates for a system far from any mapped territory. "If we're right, thousands of humans might be living there, building a civilization away from Confederate interference." John studied the map, hope rising in his chest. "Then we need to find them. First, we need proof about what really happened to Earth," Grace said firmly. "And for that, we need to infiltrate the central archives on Vorax Prime." John nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'll do it. They already know my face. I might as well use that." Grace's expression grew serious. "It's practically a suicide mission." John smiled grimly. Then it's a good thing humans have such a mythical survival instinct. Vorax Prime glowed like a jewel against the blackness of space. The Confederate capital world was home to the Central Archives, where the true history of the galaxy was stored. Security was tight. No unauthorized being had ever breached its walls. On the Remembrance, final preparations for the infiltration were underway. Ryan Peters, the network's security specialist, helped John alter his appearance. The facial restructuring gel will hold for 48 hours, Ryan explained, applying the clear substance to John's face. You'll look like a Grendalian traitor, common enough that no one will look twice. John sat patiently as his features change, bones shifting painlessly under the gel. Will it fool their scanners? It should. Lisa modified the genetic markers to match Grendalian patterns. Lisa Summers entered the room carrying data chips. As the network's information analyst, she had spent weeks studying archive security protocols. These contain your false identity, she said, handing the chips to John. Trader Zoltak from the outer colonies. Your ship registration and trade manifests will check out if they run a standard verification. John memorized the details of his cover story. How do I get past the bioscanners? With this, Lisa showed him a small device. It creates a field that confuses their species identification systems. They'll detect you as Grendalian, not human. The plan was simple but dangerous. John would pose as a trader with information to sell to the archives. A common transaction on Vorax Prime. Once inside, he would access a restricted terminal and download the truth about Earth's destruction. 3 days later, John walked confidently through the grand entrance of the Central Archives. His altered face showed no fear as guards scanned his identity chips. Purpose of visit? Asked a board security officer. I have historical trade data from the Pelion route, John replied in the clicking accent of a Grendalian. Rare information your archivists might find valuable. The officer nodded and waved him through. John followed the designated path to the acquisition department, all while memorizing the layout. He needed to reach the secure terminals on level 7. When a group of officials entered a restricted elevator, John slipped in behind them. No one questioned his presence, his traitor disguise working perfectly. On level 7, John moved purposefully, as if he belonged there. He found an empty terminal and plugged in a device Lisa had given him. It bypassed the security protocols in seconds. John's fingers flew across the interface, searching for files related to Earth. The terminal struggled to keep up with his speed. Another human myth confirmed. Most species could not process information so quickly. Suddenly, alarms blared. John's heart raced, but he kept working. The files were right there. Classified documents about the Preserver Council's decision to eliminate humanity. As security forces approached, John read quickly, absorbing crucial information. Earth wasn't destroyed just because humans were physically dangerous. The Preservers had discovered something else. Early human explorers had found evidence that the Confederacy's founding species had engineered themselves from more primitive forms. This contradicted their claim of natural evolutionary superiority, the cornerstone of Confederate social hierarchy. John downloaded everything to a hidden storage device in his artificial Grendalian skin layer. Just as he finished, security officers surrounded him. Halt! You're accessing restricted information. John turned slowly, calculating his options. 6 officers, all armed. The exit was 30 steps away. I surrender, he said calmly, raising his hands. The security chief approached, weapon raised. Species verification scan shows inconsistencies. Restrain and bring 4. John moved. His body seemed to blur with speed that shocked the officers. He ducked under one weapon, disarmed a second officer, and was halfway to the exit before they recovered from their surprise. Fire, shouted the security chief. Energy weapons discharge, but John was already moving in a zigzag pattern, anticipating their aim with reflexes no Confederate species possessed. He reached the exit, crashed through a security gate, and sprinted down an emergency stairwell. The human fight or flight response. Another myth proven real is John's body pumped adrenaline, allowing him to outpace his pursuers. He reached the lower levels, the precious data secure against his skin. Now he just needed to escape the most secure facility in the galaxy. The data John stole from the Central Archives spread quickly through Confederate space. Using hidden channels in the communication network, the human survivors broadcast the truth to every world and station. Most aliens dismissed it as fake, but some began to wonder. On the mining planet Trelvin 3, news arrived that a Confederate strike force was coming to investigate rumors of human activity. Barbara Clark, who worked as mining supervisor, knew she had to act fast. "We need to evacuate Level 4 immediately," she told her alien workers. "This is not a drill." The miners looked confused. "Why?" asked a Zovian digger. "Our shift just started." Barbara checked her scanner. Structural weakness in the eastern support beams. Everyone out now. As the miners evacuated, Barbara stayed behind to check that no one remained. When the last worker left, she ran to the control room and activated the emergency protocols. Then she began the long climb up 30 levels of emergency stairs. 28 hours later, Barbara was still guiding evacuation efforts. She hadn't slept or eaten, yet she showed no signs of fatigue. The Zovian mining director watched in amazement. "You should rest," he said. "No being can work this long without breakdown." Barbara smiled grimly. "I'll rest when everyone is safe." By the 30th hour, the last transport left the planet. Confederate ships arrived minutes later, finding only empty mines. Barbara's endurance had saved over 3,000 workers and hidden the evidence of human presence. Another myth confirmed. On the medical station Helix, Dr. Alan Wilson faced a crisis of his own. An outbreak of Taurian fever had spread through the station, overwhelming the medical staff. Most doctors could work 4 hours before needing rest, but Alan had been performing surgery for 16 hours straight. "How are you still standing?" asked his Helix assistant. "Your coordination should be failing." "I'm fine," Alan said, moving to the next patient. "Bring me more vaccine." His hands remained steady, his mind clear despite the exhaustion. When Confederate investigators arrived looking for humans, the station administrator defended Alan. "This doctor saved hundreds of lives today," she said. "If he's human, then perhaps we should reconsider what we know about them." Meanwhile, Commander Grace and her crew faced the most dangerous situation. Confederate forces had tracked the Remembrance to an uninhabited moon. Their ship was disabled, the oxygen systems failing after a direct hit. "We have maybe 2 hours of air left," Daniel reported grimly. Grace looked at the 12 humans on the bridge. "They expect us to panic or surrender." "What's the plan?" Kelly asked. "We show them another human myth," Grace replied. "Everyone, meditation positions." The humans sat cross-legged on the floor, controlling their breathing as Grace had taught them. It was an ancient human technique, passed down through generations and enhanced with science. By slowing their metabolism and oxygen consumption, they could survive far longer than any Confederate species believed possible. As oxygen levels dropped to fatal levels, the humans entered a trance-like state. Their breathing slowed to just 1 breath per minute, their heartbeats barely detectable. 4 hours later, Confederate Marines boarded the vessel, expecting to find corpses. Instead, they found the humans alive and fighting. The Marines retreated in shock, reporting to their superiors that humans could survive without air. Across Confederate space, more humans revealed themselves through demonstrations of their mythical abilities. A human child on Proxima Station lifted a fallen beam that had trapped his alien friends. A human pilot flew through a radiation storm to deliver medical supplies without protection gear, surviving radiation levels that would kill most species. The Confederate media could no longer deny the evidence. Humans were real, their abilities were real, and they had been unjustly targeted. On Vorax Prime, the Preserver Council convened an emergency session. Their worst fear had come true. Humanity had survived, and now the galaxy knew the truth about Earth's destruction. "We must contain this situation," said High Counselor Droltax. A junior counselor looked up from his data pad, his face pale. "It's too late. The humans have broadcast a new message." On screens across the Confederacy, John Carter's face appeared. Behind him stood dozens of humans. "People of the Confederacy," he began. "For centuries, you've been told humans were extinct. Today, you learn we survived. And we are not alone." 3 years passed since John Carter's broadcast shook the Confederacy. The Great Hall of the new Confederate Council gleamed under soft lights. Unlike the old council chambers with their imposing architecture designed to intimidate, this space was built for equality, with seats arranged in a circle. Representatives from dozens of species filled the hall. Among them sat 5 humans, including John Carter. Once considered extinct, humans now had an official voice in galactic affairs. High Chancellor Vrilson, a reformist who had replaced the disgraced preserver leadership, stood at the center of the circle. "Today marks the formal end of the inquiry into Earth's destruction," he announced. "The evidence is clear. The former Preserver Council authorized the attack on Earth, not because humans threatened galactic peace, but because they threatened the false narrative of evolutionary superiority." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Even 3 years later, many found it hard to accept how thoroughly they had been deceived. "As Chancellor, I officially apologize to the human representatives and to all survivors of Earth. The Confederacy acknowledges this crime and commits to making amends." John Carter stood, his face solemn. Though only 3 years had passed for the galaxy, for him, it had been centuries since Earth's destruction. "We accept your apology," he said simply. "Humans have never sought revenge, only truth and recognition." The Council voted unanimously to allocate resources to the search for the rumored hidden human colony. Ships were already exploring the coordinates found in the Central Archives. After the ceremony, John found himself face to face with senior historian Skilnar, the same alien whose lecture had started everything years ago. The historian looked much older now, his gray skin wrinkled with age. "Ambassador Carter," Skilnar said hesitantly, "I owe you a personal apology. I spent my career dismissing human capabilities as myths, spreading false information that supported the Preserver's narrative." John studied the historian's face. "You believe what the records told you. That is no excuse for a true scholar," Skilnar replied sadly. "I should have questioned, investigated. Instead, I mock your species' achievements." The historian gestured around the room, where humans chatted with aliens, some showing off their physical abilities in friendly demonstrations. "The most remarkable thing about humans," Skilnar admitted, "isn't your physical capabilities, impressive as they are. It's your capacity for forgiveness alongside your determination never to forget." John nodded, accepting the insight. "That's why we agreed to join the Confederacy rather than remain separate. The past cannot be changed, but the future is unwritten." Later that night, John stood alone on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Kelly joined him, looking out at the stars. "The scout ships reached the coordinates," she said quietly. "You were right." John's heart raced. "They found it. New Terra." Kelly smiled, her eyes shining. "More than found it. It's real, John. A thriving world with millions of humans. Your wife and daughter's names are in their records. They made it." For the first time since waking from stasis, John Carter wept openly. All the years of believing he was alone, of fighting to uncover the truth, it had led to this moment. Far beyond Confederate space, the hidden world of New Terra glowed blue and green beneath its sun, a paradise built by human ingenuity and determination. As Confederate ships approached in peace, the planet's defense grid activated automatically. In orbit, communications officers received a message from below. "Unidentified vessels, this is New Terra Defense Command. Our weapons are locked on your position. Identify yourselves immediately." The Confederate captain transmitted the authentication code John had provided. There was a long pause. Then a new voice came through, warm, female, filled with emotion. John Carter, is it really you? The myths weren't myths after all. Humans had survived, thrived, and now would take their rightful place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as teachers of what determination and hope could accomplish against impossible odds.